My name is Faye. The homies call me Drippy J. I'm born and raised in Dallas, Texas. My family is originally from Korea, so they immigrated from South Korea. They're from Incheon, Pupyeong. They were there since, I believe the late 1800s because my grandma was third generation born. And so originally from, I think, the Shandong province of China. My mom, she was fourth generation Korean born, so she was born and raised in Incheon. And so I think she moved here when she was 13 years old. So my grandparents, they grew up during the Korean War, and they would tell us wild stories and stuff. And so I think in the 70s, I forgot who was president of Korea at the time. He was that dude that built the road to Busan. And he had this very purist Korean, I think, political agenda and was pushing out a lot of the Chinese minorities at the time. And then I think my grandparents were also scared that there was gonna be another war, but it ended up going down to Vietnam instead of Korea. So they were like, listen, we gotta dip. So I don't know how, but my grandpa finessed away to the States. And I think he went to LA first. He was like, there's too many people. I'm not about it here. Figured out in the 70s that Alaska struck oil. And so they were handing out green cards like crazy because of labor. And so I think he flew out the rest of my family to Alaska. Everybody got their green cards and then went to Texas because he found out there was property there. So kind of in this similar situation where all the Chinese people set up jjajangmyeon shops in Korea, sort of set up a Chinese restaurant. I think we were one of the first jjajangmyeon restaurants in Dallas. My mom and dad met at some Asian college party. I think my dad was DJing. He's Taiwanese. He's born and raised in Taiwan. I think he came here for on the PhD Asian immigration path, not the scamming one. He was a PhD Asian. My mom was a restaurant Asian. I think they just met and, had me and my sister. I don't think I really remembered being Korean, Taiwanese, or even Asian really growing up. And I didn't even know what that meant, I don't think, until later on in college. I just knew that I grew up in a house with my grandma and my uncle and with my family all around me, and we ate kimchi and dumplings and Chinese food. And we went to church with all these other Korean people. Yeah, I guess it was just coming up in Texas like that. It doesn't really hit you until later when you start realizing you're different or you're the only person in the room that looks like you or eats like you. So it was a little bit confusing. It wasn't until college when I moved to LA and I was like, shit, I'm about to be with all the peoples. And I checked out all the orgs and I resonated most with the Korean kids, of course, because it's the same, the same experience growing up in a church, that experience, and then also food, and then it just felt more comfortable. I've always been raised around I feel cultural Korean context as a Chinese person. I'm American, right? I'm first generation born. My mom was probably fourth or fifth generation born. So I can't imagine how deeply ingrained that is. It's just when you're so discriminated against, I guess you don't want to claim being Korean or nationalistically, right? It's kind of fuck the system type shit. Maybe similar, or not similar, I know the context is completely different, but it's if you're oppressed in America, it's not necessarily you're gonna be red, white, and blue, you know what I mean? You're not gonna be claiming that, but when you move outside of that country, what else can you claim? I am a professional box enthusiast. I'm pretty queer, I'm pretty, on the gay, everyone's on the spectrum, but I'm pretty sure I'm closer to one end. I think I've known since I was pretty young, very, very young. I just didn't admit it to myself until the year after I graduated college. That was the hardest part for me because I'm also femme presenting, right? And or I can be. I felt being somebody that other people want you to be for the sake of having that power or that say, or just wanting that so bad when knowing that it's not me wasn't worth the pain and misery, right? Because when I was closeted, it was kind of there was no light at the end of the tunnel. I felt I was always doing something for somebody else. I always felt I had to be somebody else for somebody else. And it's my life, it's my experience. Granted, I am extremely lucky and grateful and blessed for where I am and having the ability to have that choice. That being said, though, if I was married to a guy and ended up settling down and having kids and all that, I feel like I would be like, I just know I would be really unhappy. And as soon as I admitted to myself, like, I like girls. Like, this is a part of me, that's who I am. And as soon as I was able to accept that, it felt like a huge weight being lifted off my shoulders. Like, I don't have to be long-haired. I don't have to be like married to this guy. It was that accepting of like, okay, like this is who I want to be. And if this is who I want to be, and if I want to be free, then I also have to like accept the risk, accept the potential exposure to like pain and violence. But that pain and violence and that risk was worth the happiness and the freedom and agency I have over my experience and like what I want to do and what I find meaningful in life. I first told my sister and my cousin, and I was like, I have something to tell y'all. And I came out as bisexual, actually, because I wasn't fully admitting. And I was like, yo, I got something to tell y'all. And they're like, what? What's going on? Like, are you gonna graduate? Like, are you pregnant? I was like, bitch, no, what are you talking about? I'm bi. Like, oh, like my sister was like, oh, bitch, you're probably gay. Like, we thought you were gonna go to jail. Like, I was like, damn, why are the expectations so low? The biggest one though was my mom, because I was financially independent at this point. And me and my mom hadn't talked for years. Like, I didn't talk to her throughout, I ran away when I was like 17. And like, I moved out and like figured out how to get to college on my own and that kind of stuff. And so by the time I graduated, we had like reconnected again. I remember she came to visit LA. I was like, shit, like, as soon as I admitted it to myself, I didn't want to procrastinate because I knew they were going to know eventually, right? It was just getting over the fear of telling them. And so we were sitting in the car. I was like, Mom, I got to tell you something. She's like, what is it? And it was like a long ass pause. And I was like, and she was like, spit it out. Like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm gay. And then there was like a long pause. She was like, how did you become a gay? And I was like, I don't know, I was just here. And then so we just like talked about it, and she was asking me questions. And I think because our relationship was like really rough at that point, she was trying, and I really appreciated that. And I could tell that she was like, you know, how long do you know? So you don't like guys at all? Who knows? All that kind of stuff. And then she was like, you know what, at the end of the day, like, just pray to God and be happy. Yeah, I was petty too. I recorded it because I thought she was gonna say some wild shit. So I recorded it. I was like, you know, like, you're gonna say some wild shit. But yeah, like, sometimes I listen back to that recording and I like cry a little bit. I think I'm really lucky. My family loves music, so there's always music around me. My dad, so he had passed away when I was like 9 years old. My parents got divorced when I was like 2. So he had moved out to LA, and he was trying to pursue like, I think, music and production and that kind of stuff. So he was trying to build like a Taiwanese pop community, and he had this like closet studio. And so when I was like 6 years old, he would put us into like the studio, and he would like play guitar, and he'd be like, Jackie, just sing into the mic. And so as a 6-year-old, like, I had like headphones in and like singing into the mic, and I heard myself for the first time, and I would just like sing for like hours. And so I think that was the first time I really just like resonated with music. It's like my first memory in terms of like the interaction with music. In my music journey, the goal was to always like share music and like see how people respond to it. Because, you know, otherwise you could just write songs and like keep them in. You don't, that's not what, you know, there are plenty of songwriters who never share any music out there. And I think like, because that was the goal, when I write my music, it was always to present an honest perspective of how I felt, even if I was lying to myself, right? Like, I have verses of me talking about like being with dudes. Those were the conversations I felt in myself, and that was as honest I could be at the time. So when I express that, or when I process that pain or emotion in the music, it's always coming from a place of honesty, I hope. Now that I've dropped the debut project, Country with No O, and that was sort of like my first step into the American music landscape, I'm gonna keep trying to like push an honest perspective forward in my way and not have to think about if other people are gonna like it or if other people are gonna rock with it. I really, really wanna make a mark in American music, because I think pursuing music like really motivates me, and I wanna see like where that goes, and like doing that is really like the light at the end of my tunnel. So I just really wanna keep going and not give up. And I hope that other kids just like, I don't know, especially other Chinese Korean kids can accept that not everything in the world is black and white, and that people are people and imperfect and have both the God and Satan in them. And it's just a matter of choosing between who you want to be and what the world expects you to be. My name is Faye, and this is my Korean American story.